What ensues when reality television meets the law? Imagine this, Sister Wives star Kody Brown stepping into a crowded courtroom, his entire family by his side, before a judge who could determine their destiny. Cameras click, reporters mutter, and the world waits in anticipation. This isn't show business on television, this is life, and the risks are greater than ever. The courtroom was tense with anticipation, well before the judge arrived. Seating was packed. Rows of reporters hunched forward with pens against paper, eager to record everything. The sound of cameras clicking was like gunfire every time the heavy wooden doors swung open. This was not just another case on the calendar. It was the case that had captured the country. And at its center was a man already familiar to millions. Kody Brown. For more than 10 years, viewers had watched Kody and his family on TLC's popular show Sister Wives. Fans saw them laugh, cry, celebrate birthdays, and struggle with the day-to-day stuff. But what was once a reality TV fad was now the basis for a high-drama legal battle. The beaming father of 18, the four wives' husband, the star of America's most bizarre family drama, today, he wasn't merely a husband or a dad. He was a defendant. "All rise," shouted the bailiff. Everyone rose as the judge arrived. Robes flowing, eyes piercing, with a slight inclination of her head, the room sat back down. But the silence was oppressive. Each and every single person present in that room understood what hung in the balance. The future itself of the Brown family, and perhaps the future of how America perceived marriage. Kody straightened his tie, his normally smiling face substituted with a clenched jaw. His wives sat tightly behind him. Mary, Janelle, Christine, and Robin. They weren't wearing TV cameras in mind now, but armor dressed up, controlled and firm. But beneath their serene facades, there was tension spiraling. You could observe it in the way Mary bunched her fists, in Christine's flitting gaze, in Robin's quivering lip, and in Janelle's long, even breaths. The courtroom was faintly scented with wood polish and tension. The buzz of hushed voices was like static in the atmosphere. At the rear, onlookers stood wedged along the walls, attempting to get a glimpse of the notorious family. A few were hopeful fans, their eyes closed, praying for a miracle. Others, cynics, folded arms and waited for the hammer of justice to descend. Across from them, the prosecutors lined up their files, stacks of binders and law books precariously high. Their job was to show that Kody Brown, by openly practicing a plural marriage, had broken Utah's anti-polygamy statutes, which had been on the books for generations. Across from them sat the defense, a tiny but fierce team, poised to make a case that love and family were not against the law. Outside the courthouse, pandemonium. News trucks blocked the street, satellite dishes upturned to the sky. Reporters reported live to the country, their voices tense. Today is a pivotal day in the case of Kody Brown against the state of Utah. The result could forever alter the way the law approaches polygamy in America. Crowds congregated with signs, some daubed in bold lettering such as "Love should be free" and "Families deserve rights." Others yelled back with signs stating, "One man, one wife and protect marriage." The chant clash wafted through the courthouse doors, reminding all that this trial was not simply about one man or one family. It was about culture, tradition, and freedom itself. The judge cleared his throat, and all eyes shifted forward. His voice was firm, with the authority of burden. "This court is here to consider the case of the state versus Kody Brown." At its center, this trial revolves around one great question: do criminal laws against plural marriage abridge private citizens' rights to live differently, or do they uphold the basic fabric of society? His words struck like a clap of thunder. For the Browns, this wasn't technical speak, it was their lives picked apart and discussed. Kody pushed forward, gaze fixed on the judge. His wives sat up straighter, determination hardening in their faces. The prosecution was quick to paint the Browns as criminals. Their top attorney rose, a man with angular features and an angular tone. He spoke to the jury, "Ladies and gentlemen, the Utah law is clear as day. One man and one woman is marriage. Not about faith, not about religion, about law." The defendant, Mr. Brown, has paraded his disdain for such laws on national television. He is not secretive about it. He is not ashamed of it. But being open does not equate to legality. We are here to enforce the law. Nothing more, nothing less. The words sounded bitter. Mary looked at Janelle, clenching her hand. Christine dropped her eyes, and Robin blinked away tears. But the defense had prepared. Their lawyer, composed but passionate, stood up to argue. His words were full of warmth and fire. Ladies and gentlemen, what is really on trial here today is not one man or his wives. It is the very principle of freedom. This family has harmed no one. They are consenting adults who chose love, who chose faith, who chose to live differently. The state has no right to criminalize love. What we ask of you today is simple. Look not at fear or prejudice, but at fairness and freedom. The jury shifted uncomfortably in their seats, eyes scanning back and forth between the two sides. While arguments volleyed back and forth, the Browns sat silently. But the weight of history bore down on them. For years they had told their story to millions of people. What was once a courageous move to expose the world to their way of living now seemed like proof against them. Their kids who were not there in the courtroom were always in their thoughts. How would their trial impact their kids? Would they grow up in a world that labeled their family as criminals? Kody considered his 18 children. His heart raced at the prospect of them being shamed, talked about behind their backs at school, or having to justify the life they never got to choose. This wasn't just for him, it was for them. When his name was summoned, he rose from his seat. His lanky physique commanded the gaze of all in the room. He stared straight at the jury, his expression stern but vulnerable. The self-assured, frequently brash reality TV star wasn't putting on a show for cameras this time. He was begging strangers to get it. He simply stated, "We are not criminals. We are a family." The subsequent silence was oppressive. The reporters even ceased writing. His words were not dramatic or practiced, they were human. And at that moment, the courtroom was not gazing at a defendant. They were gazing at a father, a husband, a man who was fighting for his right to live without shame. By the time the first recess was taken, it was obvious this was not going to be a typical trial. It was going to be a fight. The prosecutor had the law on their side. The defense had the force of human emotion and constitutional protections, and the Browns had the best weapon of all, their solidarity. As they stepped out into the hallway, cameras flashed once more. Journalists yelled questions. Microphones extended toward their faces. But Kody held up a hand and spoke just one word. "We will fight for our family." And so, session 1 came to a close. Not as peaceful start, but as a fiery opening salvo to a tale that would challenge love, law, and the very meaning of freedom in America. The courtroom fell silent when the bailiff stated the trial would resume. The first day had been dramatic. Strong opening arguments, tearful looks from the Brown family, and tension so thick you could feel it. But if the first session was about establishing the stage, the second session was about fire. This was the point at which the state would flex its muscle, presenting Kody Brown as anything but a husband and father, but as one man who had defied the law. And for the Brown family, this was the point: their faith, their lifestyle, and even their love would be scrutinized under a microscope for all the world to witness. The top prosecutor, a lanky man with serious-looking features and a hammer-like voice, strode confidently toward the jury. His shining shoes clicked on the marble floor as he carried a pile of papers. He didn't mince words. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," he continued, "Utah law is not uncertain. It is not open to interpretation. It is not up for discussion. It is not negotiable. It is plain, and it has been plain for more than a century. Marriage is one man and one woman. But on our TV screens today is sitting a man who willingly and openly disregarded that law. Not quietly in the background, but on TV for all to witness." He spun around to face Kody, his finger jutting out for emphasis. Mr. Brown has not merely broken the law. He has laughed at it. He's openly defied it, and flaunted his contempt for it before the entire world. This trial is about responsibility. If we let this go, we're saying that no law is important. If you are on television. His words fell like thunder. Gasps of shock radiated among the onlookers. Cameras snapped wildly from the media section, eager for the soundbite that would headline tomorrow's front pages. The prosecutor started presenting exhibits, footage from sister wives' family gatherings, pictures, even citations from interviews wherein Kody had openly declared his faith in plural marriage. The jury saw Kody smiling on tape, greeting his wives, discussing their family meals, their traditions, their hardship. For the Browns, these were precious moments. For the prosecutors, they were evidence of wrongdoing. This, the prosecutor said, freezing the video on a photo of Kody with his wives, is not a family photo. This is a confession. The Browns shifted uncomfortably. Mary's eyes watered as she looked at the frozen image of herself on the screen. Christine's lips tightened. Janelle closed her eyes for a moment, as if trying to block out the attack. Robin gripped the edge of her chair, her knuckles white. When it was the defense's turn, their attorney stood calmly. He adjusted his glasses and faced the jury with quiet intensity. Ladies and gentlemen, he started. The prosecution has presented to you photographs, videos, words from a television program. But I want you to ask yourselves one question. Do the pictures depict harm? Do they depict abuse? Do they depict crime? He paused, allowing the silence to hang in the air before he went on. What you see are adults, willing, consenting adults, who decided to create a life together. They decided on love. They decided on faith. They decided on family. And now they are told that their existence is illegal. Is this justice? Or is this discrimination masquerading as law? His voice increased in intensity with every phrase. You are not here to punish love. You are here to search for the truth. And the truth is easy. This family has violated no moral code, no ethical code, and no code that should be the law of the land in a free society. The jury shifted forward. Even the judge's face softened, although his expression did not change. The prosecutor then requested witness testimonies. And the tension grew. Mary Brown was the first one to be questioned. She proceeded nervously to the stand, her steps small but firm. When she sat, she glanced Kody's way for a moment, and he nodded reassuringly. Mrs. Brown, the prosecutor started. You are lawfully married to Mr. Brown, right? Yes, she replied softly. And yet you willingly share him with 3 other women, isn't that right? Mary swallowed hard. Yes, that's right. The prosecutor jumped in. So you admit your husband is in several marriages? Mary stood up straight, her voice steady now. I admit that I am married to Kody. We are a plural family spiritually. I am his one wife legally. The room shifted. The prosecutor scowled. So you're claiming the others are what? Mistresses? Roommates? The defense intervened. Objection, Your Honor. Badgering the witness. Sustained, said the judge firmly. Mary went on testifying. But the questions were pointed, designed to turn her phrases back on her. She stood firm, talking of love, of choice, of family. But when she exited the stand, her hands were trembling. Then Janelle stood before them, answering the questions with matter-of-fact pragmatism. This is my choice, she asserted to the prosecutor. No one forced me. No one deceived me. I made this life, and I'm proud of it. Christine spoke next, her voice tinged with emotion but firm. Our children are loved. They are safe. They are happy. Isn't that what matters? Last of all, Robin spoke, her voice shaking but strong. This isn't about law. This is about us being different. If we lived quietly, perhaps no one would care. But because we dared to show our family, we're here today. That's not justice. It's punishment for honesty. As each of the wives testified, the jury didn't merely hear testimony. They saw human beings. They saw not brainwashed women, not victims, but strong, capable women, who were steadfast in their decision to live otherwise. The prosecution attempted to erode their credibility, labeling their cohesion brainwashing, their affection delusion. But the more the Browns testified, the clearer it became. They weren't criminals. They were a family under attack. As the defense summoned Kody to the witness stand, the room tautened with expectation. He gazed directly into the eyes of the jury and declared, voice steady yet raw, I am not a flawless man, but I am a husband and father who loves his family. We have decided to live our lives the way we think best. The law dictates that I can love only one woman on paper, but love cannot be like that. My family is not a sin. My family is my heart. For a long time, the room was quiet. Even the prosecutor was caught off guard. By the close of session 2, the battle lines had been drawn. The prosecution had portrayed Kody as a law-defying man. The defense had presented him as a man standing up for liberty, and the wives, each with their own voice, had made the courtroom a stage for something greater than the struggle of one family. As the judge requested adjournment, the Browns stood in a unit, their hands clasped. Their photo was taken by flashbulbs as they exited. Yet their solidarity was the most powerful photo of all. The family was facing criticism, yet they weren't backing away. If anything, the trial was making them more resolute, and every one of them watching, both inside the courtroom and around the nation, knew this was merely the start of much larger tempest. The second day of witness testimony started quietly with the soft buzz of whispers throughout the courtroom. Journalists rummaged through their notebooks. Jurors shifted uncomfortably in their seats, and the Browns sat in unison in the first row, openly steeling themselves for what was to come. If the previous hearings had been exercises in law, definitions, and technical arguments, today was about something much more compelling: humanity. This was the session where the courtroom would not witness legal documents anymore, TV clips, or statutes. They would witness people, mothers, fathers, children who lived, breathed, and loved differently, but not uncompassionately. The defense recalled Mary Brown on the stand. She had already been subjected to pointed questioning by the prosecution, but this time around, the defense allowed her to speak without restraint. Her own voice, at first soft, grew in intensity as she started speaking. "When I married Kody, I never thought my journey would lead me here. I was his first wife. It was just the two of us, for many years. But our beliefs and our faith sent us in search of another type of family. It wasn't always simple, but it was never coerced. It was a choice. My choice." She paused, looking toward the jury. "I know folks think we live in some kind of weird world, but let me share with you what my world actually looks like. It looks like family dinners where everyone brings something. It looks like birthdays when the house is so crowded with kids that you can't even hear yourself think. It looks like tears when someone's hurting and laughter when someone achieves. That's what our life is. Not a crime, a family." Her words hit home. Jurors leaned forward, eyes locked on her. She was not a TV show wife. She was a woman talking about the heart of her family. Then there was Janelle, steady and cool as always. She pushed up her glasses, sat straight, and looked directly at the prosecutor before she spoke. "I am not the victim of Kody. I am his partner. I went into this marriage as an adult, with my eyes open about what it would be. I had a choice, and I chose it because it was sensible for me, for my religion, and for the kind of life I wanted to create." Her testimony had a different tone than Mary's. Whereas Mary testified emotionally, Janelle testified logically. "In my household, everyone contributes. I have worked outside the home, contributed to the finances, raised my children with the support of not only a husband, but a whole household. Isn't this what every family wishes for? Support, security, love? The state deems it illegal. I deem it survival and strength." The defense attorney allowed her words to hang in the air. The jury observed a competent, intelligent woman, not one bullied into an arrangement but one flourishing in it. Then Christine appeared, and the room seemed to tilt. Her voice rang with warmth, but also with raw emotion. "I've always adored children," she started quietly. "I longed for a large family, a rowdy home, a life full of love. And that's precisely what I have." She dabbed her eyes with a tissue before continuing. "I know people judge us. They think we're strange, or even dangerous. But let me tell you, our children are loved beyond measure. They don't grow up feeling less than. They grow up surrounded by siblings who cheer them on, mothers who support them, and a father who tries, who really tries to be there for all of them." She smiled faintly through her tears. "Isn't every child entitled to that, to be loved, to feel safe, to know that they are important? If that's not right, then I don't know what right is meant to be." When she finished, some in the gallery were crying. Even the judge shifted uneasily, obviously moved. Lastly, Robin stood before the court. She was the latest wife, the one who came into the family late in life. She trembled as she spoke. "I did not grow up in this way of living. I lived this way as an adult. After much consideration, after prayer, after understanding what it would be like. I knew it would not be simple. I knew others would judge me. But I also knew that this family was about love, and I wanted to belong to that love." Tears fell down her face as she spoke. "My kids from my previous marriage found refuge here. They found siblings who accepted them, mothers who raised them as their own, and a father who provided for them. How is that wrong? How is that a crime? Her shaking voice filled the room, causing even the prosecution to pause before their cross-examination. Though the kids themselves were not summoned to testify, too young, too vulnerable, the defense presented letters written by some of them. Innocent and uncomplicated words of children, cut through the veil of legalese. I love my moms. I love my dad. I don't care if people think it's weird. It's just my family. We might not be like other families, but we love each other, and that's all that matters. The jury read the words carefully, some with softened expressions. The innocence of children often reveals truths adults complicate. Finally, it was Kody's turn again. This time, he wasn't asked about laws or definitions. He was asked about family. I won't pretend it's easy, he admitted. Balancing time, love, and responsibilities in our home is the hardest thing I've ever done. But it's also the greatest blessing of my life. He gazed at the jury, his eyes steady and sharp. I don't expect everybody to get it. I don't expect everybody even to agree. But I beg of you, please consider us human beings. We're not here to break laws. We're not here to harm society. We're here because we love differently. And that shouldn't turn us into criminals. His voice cracked a little, but he didn't flinch. My kids observe me. They witness how I exist, how I battle for them. I wish for them to be adults who know their father, stood up even when the world instructed him to bow. That's why I'm here. Not solely for myself, not solely for my wives, but for my children and for anyone who has ever been instructed that their love diminishes them. Naturally, the prosecution wasn't quiet. They pushed hard in cross-examinations. Mrs. Brown. They challenged Christine. Doesn't it seem confusing to kids to grow up with several mothers? Christine didn't waver. Children are confused by hate, not love. Mr. Brown. They pressed Kody. Do you know you're establishing an example that devalues traditional marriage? Kody leaned forward. I'm setting an example that love comes in many forms. If that undermines tradition, maybe tradition needs to be stronger. The courtroom murmured at his boldness. Throughout it all, the jury's faces told the story. Some were skeptical, arms crossed, brows furrowed. Others seemed moved, eyes softened, pens scribbling furiously. The Browns were no longer just headlines or reality TV characters. They were flesh and blood, standing before them. When the judge adjourned court for the day, the air was thick with emotion. The Browns preceded each other out of the courtroom, hands clasped, heads held high. There were reporters, shouting questions as they closed in. Do you believe you swayed the jury? How do you respond to critics labeling this a publicity stunt? Are you worried about losing? Kody paused, looked at the camera, and stated in simple words, we're not afraid, we're a family, and families are worth fighting for. With that, they disappeared into the night, leaving behind a courtroom that had for one day stopped seeing them as lawbreakers, and started seeing them as human beings. The courtroom hummed as session 4 opened. The Browns were no longer defendants in a trial. They were now symbols. To their friends, they stood for freedom, choice, and bravery. To their opponents, they were symbols of something dangerous to tradition, threatening the very institution of marriage. And today, the trial moved from being about one family to being about a whole nation. The defense had portrayed the Browns as a happy, willing family. The prosecution had portrayed them as criminals. But now the arguments became larger. The prosecutor stood first, speaking before the jury in thundering tones. Ladies and gentlemen, this case isn't just about the defendant and his wives. It's about the type of society we wish to live in. If we legalize polygamy, what is next? Do we redefine all the marriage laws in books? Do we have unlimited unions that destroy the meaning of marriage? Laws are put in place for a purpose, to maintain order. If we let one man redefine marriage, then marriage means nothing. His sentences rang out in the room, cutting and measured. But the defense stood up as quickly, his tone calm but ferocious. Order or control? That is the true question. The Browns are not criminals. They are not abusers. They are not frauds. They are a family who has the temerity to be different. The Constitution mandates freedom of religion, freedom of privacy, and freedom of choice. Punishing the Browns is punishing freedom itself. It's not about protecting marriage. It's about punishing those who don't fit the mold. It was no longer family against law. It was freedom versus tradition. In order to make their arguments, both the prosecution and the defense brought in expert witnesses. The state called a sociologist, who testified that polygamy had the potential to destabilize society. In societies where there is widespread practice of polygamy, he stated, we observe jealousy, inequality, and exploitation. It creates an imbalance under which powerful men accumulate wives, while other men are left without wives. The prosecutor smiled smugly. And isn't that the very thing Mr. Brown is doing, gathering wives? The courtroom gasped at the rawness of the question. Defense objected, but the harm was done. Then came the defense's turn. They called in a constitutional expert, a professor who was known for his eloquence. He stood up straight, pushing his glasses up on his nose before he spoke. His state has no place in the private lives of consenting adults. If there is no harm, no fraud, no abuse, then criminalizing relationships is a straightforward abrogation of liberty. You might not agree with the Browns' decisions, but disagreement is not a criminal offense. That is freedom's core. His words were steeped in conviction, and for the first time, some jurors audibly nodded. Outside the courthouse, meanwhile, the trial turned into a circus. There were chants and waving signs high above the air. Love is love. One man, one wife. Families deserve rights. Protect marriage. Television cameramen televising live updates hourly. Talk shows discussed it. Clergymen opined, labeling it a moral travesty, or a measure of genuine freedom. Politicians made capital out of it, some proclaiming support for family freedom, while others sounded alarms of the breakdown of values. Social media went wild. Hashtags trending globally. #Brown trial. #let them love. #protect marriage. Memes, arguments, and furious exchanges dominated timelines. The Browns, erstwhile reality TV celebrities, were now the reluctant symbols of a national culture war. Back in the courtroom, tension simmered. Cross-examining, the prosecutor asked Christine, Mrs. Brown, you say your children are content, but isn't it true they get mocked at school? Christine's eyes flashed. Children are made fun of for all sorts of things. What they wear, their families, what they believe. That has nothing to do with us. That has to do with a society that cannot accept differences. The prosecutor moved forward. You concede your lifestyle hurts your children socially. Christine responded tartly. No, I concede judgment hurts my children. And it begins with people like you. The gallery gasped. The judge hammered on his gavel for order. But the moment was already charged in the courtroom. The judge, normally expressionless, started to exhibit the gravity of the case. He realized his decision would not only impact one family, it would have a ripple effect across the country. He listened intently, pen tapping against his notepad, eyes narrowing with each sentence. Once, he stood up and asked both lawyers a straightforward question. If the Browns are consenting adults, living quietly in their religion, what is the state's compelling interest in criminalizing them? Is it moral disapproval, or is there measurable harm? The prosecutor stuttered briefly, taken aback by the bluntness of the question. The defense, though, jumped on it. Precisely, Your Honor, the defense lawyer replied forcefully. This is a matter of morality, not law. And in America we do not enact legislation against morality. That hurts no one. It was a turning point. The balance seemed to tip. Through the fiery arguments, the Browns sat together, their cohesion unbowed. When one of them was hit, the others comforted them. A pat on the shoulder, a reassuring squeeze. To the jury, this wordless solidarity was as deafening as any witness. As the court recessed, reporters yelled questions on the courthouse steps as the family descended. One asked Kody, do you believe this trial might bring about the end of polygamy in America? Kody hesitated, then replied matter-of-factly, this trial isn't about ending polygamy, it's about ending fear. If we lose, families like ours will live in fear. If we win, families like ours will live in peace. That's the difference. The clip was broadcast that night on all major networks. To the faithful, it was compelling. To critics, it was enraging. Session 4 was not only about battles in the courtroom, it was about America. People debated the Browns in coffee shops, offices, churches, and living rooms. pioneers of freedom or lovers of tradition, heroes or criminals. The trial had become greater than a judicial process. It was a mirror, reflecting profound divisions in society. And within the courtroom itself, the Browns experienced it all. They weren't just fighting for themselves. They were bearing the hopes and anxieties of thousands more who lived in quiet fear of exposure. As Session 4 ended, the atmosphere crackled. The prosecution had made threat after threat, saying legalizing polygamy would unravel society. The defense had passionately argued that freedom cannot be bound by prejudice. The judge, having listened attentively, adjourned for the day. His gavel came down, ringing like thunder. All the people in the courtroom understood. The next day would feature a verdict that would make history. The Browns departed the courtroom as a group, their faces somber but determined. They had no illusions. No matter the verdict, life would never be the same again. And when night fell on the courthouse, cameras flashed, crowds cheered, and America held its breath. The last day of the trial came like a tempest. The courthouse was ringed by barricades, filled with protesters, journalists, and mere curiosity seekers. Some held signs of hope, others of outrage. Helicopters whirred in the skies, and news anchors poised to deliver history live. Within, the Browns sat shoulder to shoulder. The room was a vice-like grip of tension. Weeks of testimony, argument, and emotional warfare had reached its culmination. The verdict. The gallery was still. Each cough, each shuffle, each tap of shoe reverberated against marble walls. The judge strode in, his black robe billowing like a shadow, and the room stood as one. "Please be seated," he said. His voice carried the weight of destiny. The jury filed in. Their expressions gave nothing away. Stone faces masking weeks of struggle behind closed doors. Some looked exhausted, others resolute. No one could tell which way the scales had tipped. The clerk stood and unfolded the verdict form. On the first count, unlawful cohabitation. The clerk's voice trembled slightly as she read, "Not guilty." Gasps swept through the courtroom. The Browns clasped hands, relief dawning on their faces. But the clerk wasn't finished. On the second count, violation of state marriage codes. She read once more, "Guilty." The stunned silence that filled the room was oppressive. The Browns' faces plummeted, but they maintained their grip. The divided verdict had both acquitted and convicted them. The judge leaned forward, over his glasses. "This court finds that while the defendant's lifestyle is protected under certain freedoms, their formal recognition of multiple marriages violates state law as currently written. The penalty will be considered." The gavel struck. The courtroom erupted, some cheering, some booing, others weeping. Reporters dashed out to deliver breaking news. Kody closed his eyes and whispered, "It's not over. We'll fight." His wives surrounded him, their unity unshaken even in defeat. Christine, her eyes welling up with tears, looked over at Mary and said softly, "At least they saw us as a family. That counts." Robin clutched her children close, protecting them from the storm that raged about them. Janelle, steady and unshaken, reached out and touched Kody on the shoulder, anchoring him in reality. Guilty on one charge, yet not completely criminalized. It was mixed, half victory, half loss. Weeks afterward, the Browns came back for sentencing. The judge had lost sleep, considering not only the law but the effect on society. In this instance, he started, "I find the defendants guilty of breaking marriage laws. But I cannot help but see that this family has done no proven harm, nor committed abuse or fraud. So I am sentencing them not to jail, but to probation and fines. More importantly, I call on the legislature to revisit these laws of the past. For the courtroom is not the place to resolve cultural wars." The Browns exhaled, a no prison, no dismantling of their family. But the words meant more than that. A call to change. The ruling stunned the world. Cable news covered it around the clock. Some hailed it as a historic victory for family freedom. Others excoriated it as a threat of a loophole for polygamy. Commentators debated on evening talk shows. Ministers made public statements. Activists proclaimed victory. And social media. It was ablaze. Viral clips of Christine's testimony in court circulated. Memes of Kody with phrases such as "one man, too many wives" inundated feeds. The trial was the topic of documentaries, podcasts, and endless discussion. Standing on the steps of the courthouse, Kody stepped forward into the throng of cameras. His wives stood beside him, hands clasped together. "We arrived here as defendants," he stated. "But we depart today as a family that fought for freedom. We didn't win everything, but we established something significant. Love that is honest and consensual is not criminal. This battle is larger than us. It's about every family that has been compelled to hide, every kid that has been informed their home is bad. To them we say you are not alone. This is only the beginning." His words sparked a tide of support. To many, the Browns had become reality. TV celebrities turned reluctant pioneers. Life after the trial was far from easy. The guilty verdict loomed above them like a shadow. They paid fines, suffered public shame, and experienced the bite of criticism wherever they went. But they also gained something strong: visibility. Families who were in the same situation contacted them, thanking them for their bravery. Lawyers started filing new cases, moved by the Browns. Interest groups discovered energy that they had never had before. The trial was a lesson and a burden for the children. They had been bullied. Yes, yet they had seen resilience firsthand. Most of them said afterwards that the trial had taught them to be proud of who they were, no matter what other people might say. In the years that were to come, the case became a pillar in legal debates. Law schools taught from it, referring to it as the Brown precedent. Legislators fought over reform. Some states relaxed laws regarding cohabitation, while others doubled up. But the cultural effect was certain. The Browns had challenged a conversation that could no longer be avoided. Documentaries soon referred to the trial as the day polygamy went public. Scholars penned books on the subject. And for the Browns themselves, the trial became at once a wound and a badge of honor. Years afterward, Christine sat down for an interview and looked back. "We did not intend to be symbols. We simply wanted to live our lives. But when the law attacked us, we had a choice: hide or resist. We resisted. And though we did not win at all, we made people acknowledge us. Not as criminals, but as human beings. And that's a triumph in itself." Her words captured in a nutshell what the trial had evolved into. Not merely one of legality, but of humanity. And so the Browns' courtroom struggle concluded not in complete triumph or complete devastation, but somewhere in between. A verdict that punished them, but also gave them hope. A ruling that shut one door but opened another. The trial scarred, yes, but it also left a legacy. The courage of a family to stand in the brightest of lights, and a nation compelled to look into a mirror and ask, what is freedom? As the courthouse doors shut behind them, the Browns stepped hand in hand into an uncertain future, not shattered, not defeated, but together. And in the sound of that gavel fall, their tale grew larger than television, greater than law. It grew into history.